Market at day's low as stocks failed to hold ground after a steady opening today. IT and financials drag, while FMCG and industrial stay resilient.
SEBI allows the government's stake in IDBI Bank to be classified as public holding provided its post-divestment stake is not greater than 15% and it doesn't exercise any control. The move removes a key hurdle for bidders.
Shobha and macro tech developers report a strong trend in home bookings and collections in the third quarter, and the commentary also exudes optimism.
And select mid-cap swing to news. Mukund gains after closing a big land sale deal. Force Motors rides up on strong sales in December, and Pokarna jumps after it is cleared of dumping products in the US.
And the RBI governor sets out 6 priorities for South Asia. These are taming inflation, containing external debt vulnerabilities, raising productivity, strengthening cooperation on energy, focusing on climate and going green, and promoting tourism. Hello and welcome. You tuned into Business Lunch. I'm Nisha Podar, and with me as always is my co-anchor Pavitra Parekh. So Pavitra, we are seeing another day of weakness today. Let's take a look at the market. Nifty almost at the low point of the day, 150 points lost on Nifty 50, 17,843 level. This after, remember, the opening was at 18,000 level and given up on those crucial levels, and difficult to hold on to that, especially when the overall market momentum is also trending towards weakness. When we talk about sensex, over 500 points top at the moment. Bank Nifty is the one which is again the key dragger in terms of the overall momentum. So 1.26% down on Bank Nifty, and mid-cap index is also in line with the key indices, inching towards a 1% drop. When we talk about the advanced decline ratio, it is on the side of the declines, but a few stocks which really come up on the screen which have a contra call at the moment in terms of showing some green are the life insurance company HDFC Life as well as SBI Life, and also some of the others like BPCL, M&M, Britannia and the others. But Bajaj Twins, they are the ones, they have been a spot of bother yesterday and even today, along with some of the biggies which have been dragging the overall market down. Pavitra.
Oh, absolutely. It is really the financials today which are, bearing a brunt of the pain. And in addition to that, you have some of the IT names. Remember, the IT earnings start on Monday. So ahead of that, that space is not looking very good. By the way, Dabur's Q3 update is on your screen. It's really not looking good, especially in terms of the kind of commentary. They're saying rural markets are still under pressure. They're expecting margin compression to come through, and that is reflecting in the stock as well. So currently around 2.5% lower on the Dabur stock. Few more updates from that front will be up. In fact, we'll also get Mangalam to tell you more about that. But this is really not being taken well by the street right now. I think the main pain point comes in where they have said that the rural space continues to be under pressure, and then margin contraction of around 200 basis points is what they are expecting for the coming quarter. Demand trends remain quite weak across the industry, so it is all of those comments which is really weighing on the stock price as well. But that's what's going on with the market action. We'll come back to this in a bit. The top story now, fighting inflation remains the top priority for central banks across the globe. And speaking at an IMF conference today, RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das re-emphasized the importance of taming inflation, especially for South Asian countries. So let's listen in to some of those comments.
The first policy priority for the South Asian region is obviously taming inflation. Multiple external shocks in the form of COVID-related global supply chain disruptions, food and energy crisis following the war in Ukraine, and financial market volatility arising from the aggressive monetary policy tightening have exerted sustained price pressures in the South Asian economies, which is of course felt in other parts of the world also. For successful disinflation, credible monetary policy actions accompanied by targeted supply-side interventions, fiscal, trade policy and administrative measures have become the key instruments.
All right, from South Asia, let's move across to United States then. And Wall Street slipped an overnight session after strong private jobs data gave rise to the fresh concerns of higher rates staying for longer as the Fed continues to fight the inflation problem. Now, the prospect of having higher rates for longer is also giving rise to fears of a recession in the United States. However, St. Louis Fed President James Bullard believes that rates are almost at sufficiently high levels and a soft landing could indeed be possible for the U.S. economy. Take a listen.
Louis Fed President Jim Bullard saying several factors may combine to make 2023 a disinflationary year. Among those things that will be factors are the Fed's front-loading and aggressive policy rate hikes. He says the policy rate is not yet sufficiently restrictive, but he said it's getting closer, and he actually showed one of his charts. Remember the one in November where he talked about this idea of a range of 5 to 7%? There's some suggestion in there that maybe 5% is closer to, or above 5% is where he thinks it ought to be. The policy rate, he says, will become sufficiently restrictive during 2023. Inflation remains too high, but he notes it has declined recently. Inflation expectations, he says, are back to relatively low levels, again, crediting the Fed's aggressive rate hikes for that. Second half GDP growth, he is making note of the stronger data we've had. He said it's going to be stronger than the first half, but he does see growth slowing down to being just below potential growth. The current labor market situation, however, he says, is unprecedented, and he's concerned about the possibility of increased financial stress, but notes that the market's transition to dealing with these higher rates, has been relatively orderly. So I'm not going to call this dovish, but I'm going to say it's not as especially hawkish as he might have been back in November when he talked about this range of 5 to 7% for a funds rate. He's still showing a range, but that top range has come down now, being below 7.
All right, Steve, thanks a lot for getting us all of those details. In fact, Steve also spoke to Kansas City Fed President Esther George, who is nearing the end of a 40-year-long central banking career. He asked her about the outlook on rates and whether she sees a possibility of a recession in the United States. Listen in.
For myself and for my colleagues, we understand that high inflation is going to require our action. So we have been moving our forecast up to higher levels. You saw that in the most recent dot plot that came out in December. And I think holding that until we get confidence that inflation is actually coming down is really the message we're trying to put out there. I'll be over 5%, and I see staying there for some time. Again, until we get the signals that inflation is really convincingly starting to fall back toward our 2%. I'm not forecasting a recession, but I'm quite realistic that when you see below trend growth and the idea that our instrument is going to work on demand, bringing that down, it doesn't leave a lot of margin there. So any shock could come, any risk to the outlook could send the economy in that direction. So not my forecast, but I do understand that bringing demand down creates that sort of possibility.
All right. So that was the worry from the U.S. economy, and all those macro factors are going to weigh on that as well. And just one thing, just keep an eye out on TCS stock. It has hit another low for the day and 2.59% down at the moment. Market trending weak. Let's slip into a short breather on the show. But remember, Dabur reacts to a weak third quarter business update, and we get you all the details on that shortly. The stock is reacting negatively.
Hey guys, welcome back. You're still tuned in to Business Lunch on CNBC-TV18. In the past few minutes, it is really the metal stocks which have come under pressure. They had opened with pretty decent gains, but a lot of them, the likes of Hindalco, Tata Steel, all at the low point of the day. And in addition to metals, you're also seeing some pressure come through in the FMCG pack. It was what was really adding support to the market all through the morning. But now if you take a look at HUL or a Tata Consumer, all of these also at the low point of the day. And of course, Dabur, because, we just got their Q3 update, and that's really not looking good. That stock around 2.7% lower as we speak. But let's get Mangalam in to bring us some more details. Mangalam, they're still saying demand looks very weak and penciling in quite a big contraction in the margins.
Well, that's correct. So Dabur, as against what Marico or GCPL reported, their update seems slightly soft. Why do I say that? Well, because one, Dabur has the maximum exposure to the rural markets as against the others in the FMCG pack. They say that rural markets continue to remain under pressure, but they have also said, just the way Parley pointed out earlier as well, towards the latter part of the quarter, there was moderate recovery, or there was visible recovery in rural demand sentiment. However, for India, they expect low to mid-single-digit revenue growth in the quarter. Healthcare portfolio returned to positive growth. Remember, this portfolio has an adverse base effect because during the COVID times, healthcare was the one business which was doing extremely well for them. And on account of a high base, we'd seen negative growth in their healthcare business. So now that's turned positive. The F&B business continues to trend at robust levels, is what the company said. Food is doing well for all FMCG companies this time around. But for Dabur, the other part is that among all the other companies, they have a fair amount of exposure to the international business as well. Now, while international business constant currency basis has reported decent revenue growth, there has been a lot of weakness in the currency in Turkey as well as Egypt. So on a reported basis, there would be a problem on account of currency translation. So what does all of this mean for consolidated business for Dabur? The revenue is expected to grow in low to mid-single digit growth, which is lower than what the others have reported so far. And secondly, gross margins, while they will see an improvement, quarter on quarter, EBITDA margins are likely to decline by about 200 to 250 basis points. That on account of some inflation, but more importantly, the weakness in international currency. So all these things don't bode well so much for Dabur in the third quarter. Let's see how the fourth quarter pans out. But for now, the stock at the low point of trade.
All right. Thanks so much, Mangalam, for getting us all those details. What really market has taken cognizance of from Dabur's commentary and update is that rural demand is still under pressure, and that's where the stock is down 2.5%. All right, IDBI Bank is on our radar next, and that's surging in trade today after the market regulator SEBI agreed to classify the government's post-stake sale holding as public shareholding. Remember, this is an important dispensation given by SEBI to aid this transaction and the disinvestment by the government. Abhishek Kothari joins us with all the details. Abhishek.
Well, as you mentioned, this is a special dispensation that we are seeing from SEBI with respect to IDBI Bank asking them to classify government holding as public post the divestment. So the new acquirer of the bank will have to meet the minimum public shareholding, that is about 25% post the deal. So post divestment, Government of India will not exercise any control over the affairs at IDBI Bank. They'll not have any special rights with respect to the bank, and they won't have any representation on the board of IDBI Bank, nor will have any key managerial person in IDBI Bank. Voting rights of Government of India will be capped at less than 15% of the total voting rights, and reclassification as public with respect to open offer being made by the new acquirer will be there. Back to you.
Abhishek, thanks a lot for bringing us all of the details of that stock at the high point of the day, almost 7% higher in trade. But with that, let's also bring you some interesting opinion. Earlier today, we caught up with Mark Mobius, founder at Mobius Capital Partners, to get his view on the market. And he believes that India is in a sweet spot and will continue to outperform. He also named a few of his favorite stocks in the Indian markets. Check it out.
India has outperformed everybody else is an indication of the incredible growth that you're witnessing in India now, which will continue in this new year. I believe that we're in a very, very sweet spot when it comes to India. A lot of things are going well for the country compared to other parts of the world. And despite the fact that you have recession fears in the US, the reality is that oil prices are coming down, and this is very good for India. And also, the Indian economy is doing very well on the back of the reforms that Mr. Modi is putting in place. There are a number of software companies we're looking at. We're looking at healthcare again, and also some of the more interesting specialized tech companies, companies, for example, that are doing mapping, companies that are doing consumer surveys, that sort of thing. I think what's happened is that because of COVID, a lot of people thought that, oh, these companies like Metropolis who are doing testing, companies like Metropolis who are doing testing will do very, very well in a COVID environment. But then when the COVID is off the paper, then these companies will not do very well. So that's the reason why you've seen the decline. We prefer stocks in the technologies area, like Persistent Systems in India, software companies. We prefer healthcare, companies like Metropolis, and we prefer companies that are doing something in the infrastructure area, particularly in India, because the infrastructure spending is increasing. So you have companies like Apollo, Tubes, and so forth.
All right, India in a sweet spot, says Mark Mobius. With that, we'll slip into a short breather on Business Lunch. But on the other side, we get you the highlights from the exciting high-tech gizmos being displayed at the Consumer Electronics Show 2023 in Las Vegas. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Business Lunch, and weakness deepens in the market at the moment. Nifty 50 racing towards the 1% drop at the moment to 166 points down. And one stock on my radar is TCS ahead of its numbers on 9th of this month, that is Monday. Well, TCS is losing ground very quickly in the last few minutes of trade. Right now, over 3% down in trade. All right, keep an eye out on the markets to some international developments and important ones at that. Let's get in some update from Russia-Ukraine war. Well, the Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered a 36-hour ceasefire on the Ukraine front line in order to allow the troops of both the countries to observe Orthodox Christmas celebrations. Now, Ukraine, which continues to receive military aid from Germany and other NATO countries, rejected this offer, calling it an act of hypocrisy. In fact, President Zelensky also said that the offer was a trick to halt the progress of Ukraine's forces in the eastern Donbas region. Listen in.
They now want to use Christmas as a cover, albeit briefly, to stop the advances of our boys in Donbass and bring equipment, ammunitions and mobilized troops closer to our positions. What will that give them? Only yet another increase in their total losses.
All right, that is the latest on the Russia-Ukraine issue. We will keep bringing you updates on that front. But moving on now, the 2023 edition of the Consumer Electronics Show, an exhibition where companies showcase products at the cutting edge of technology, is currently underway. Exhibits showcased include, get this, BMW's new car which changes colors, a flying car, a portable electric scooter which folds into a suitcase, and a robot dog as well, which can double up as a pet. CNBC-TV18's Shibani Gharat is in Vegas for the event, and she's been checking out all of these very fun high-tech products. Check it out.
At the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, BMW at their keynote unveiled a car that changes colors. Yes, you heard me right. It can actually be called a chameleon, but it is called iVision D, iVision DEE, which stands for Digital Emotional Experience. Now, it is coated with this particular ink called e-ink that can be cycled through 32 different colors. It's not just something or a way of interaction with somebody who's actually driving the car, but also a way of interacting with somebody on the outside, probably driving past your car. Now, BMW says that this concept or this idea behind the car is to showcase the future of how a consumer or somebody who's driving the car is interacting with their car and how the car interacts back with them. Flying cars have been spoken about at CES for quite some time, but behind me is a prototype of one such flying car by Aska that will make it a reality very soon. It is planning to get an FAA approval very soon. Now, this car has a range of 250 miles on single charge. Yes, it's electric, but it also has a hybrid petrol engine, so you can use both the kinds of fuels to fly the car. Also, along with this, let me tell you, this car is foldable to make it possible to drive it on the road. Now, this car is going to take its first flight in this particular quarter, and it has a speed of 150 mph. I'm currently sitting on an electric scooter that folds into a suitcase. Yes, you heard me right. So if parking is an issue for you, You can take this one to your house and park it in your home because it does fold into a suitcase. Now you need to charge it for 3 hours to ride for 1 hour or approximately 20 miles, and it is quite portable. Now, Wowie is a company at CES that has launched a robo-dog called Dog E. Now, this particular dog has a million different combinations of sound, colors and personality traits because they feel that every dog has its own unique personality, and it is so accurate. Now, this particular dog has sensors on the head, so you can just tap on the head, on the nose, and then on the sides as well. And as you can see, it's currently wagging its tail. It is in fact a lifelike dog experience that you get out of this dog robo.
All right, what technology, what innovation. It was a treat, but why should Shivani have all the fun? There's Tech Toys and Shivani and getting us that report from Las Vegas. With that, it's a wrap on Business Lunch. Thanks so much for tuning in.